Hey guys, Primal Chaos, welcome back to the channel. If you're new around here, which is everybody, because I literally just started this channel, I have a pretty eclectic taste in music. I like everything from pop, classical, hip hop, everything. Like everybody says that, but truly, I really don't have a true passion for any specific genre. I like everything all the way through to symphonic metal and things like that. But I'm embarrassed to say that I have a vast chasm of like illiteracy when it comes to like the genres of hardcore and metalcore, and obviously I've skirted around it. My band used to play shows with some local bands in that genre and things like that, and it's never really been a genre that leapt out to me with a vast amount of appeal. And I feel like that's unfair because it has so many elements to it that do appeal to me when cherry picked from other genres and things like that. So I thought I'd take it upon myself to sort of learn more about the genre and study the genre, and to be able to force myself to listen to the tracks in a meaningful way. I thought I'll start a channel and interact with people from that genre, hopefully, and get some input and some comments and maybe learn a thing or two from people who live and breathe this stuff. I feel like that's the best way to learn. So long story short, I did a video on Parkway just the other day. First time I've really heard them. I've heard Parkway in passing, but never listened to Parkway. So I feel like it was a good idea to start sort of with one of the most popular bands in the genre and sort of go from there. And what I discovered is that Vice Grip, what I sort of realized halfway through was I was listening to a song that wasn't very indicative of the sound of that band. I've since learned that it was kind of like at a turning point in the band's career where they started to move in a different direction. So I thought I'd jump back based on a recommendation from the chat. I thought I'd try something from Deep Blue, and the first song that jumped up on YouTube was a song called Karma. So I'm going to be listening to that today. And without too much further ado, I'm going to just jump straight in and take a listen. I feel like this is going to be more in line with my expectations of not only the genre, but what Parkway Drive is capable of as well. So yeah, let's check it out. Already, this is way more what I had in mind when I was thinking Parkway Drive. Oh, and first of all, the chops on that drum intro is excellent. I feel like we're going into an interlude there. First of all, it can't be understated how much of this band's sound comes from the rhythm section. A lot of people don't realize that because it's one of those things where the rhythm section does all the work and the guitarists get all the credit. And I'm not saying they're not doing an amazing job. I love the stereo effect, how there's one in each ear and things like that. That always gives a really cool sort of affectation to the overall sound. But just, oh my God, the way that the bass player is locked in with the drums, it's 80% of the sound. All of that sort of aggression and that heavy chugginess and the punchiness of those riffs, a lot of people, they'll hear the guitar and they'll think, man, those guitars are awesome. And then I feel like this is part of the reason people in this genre tend to detune their guitars a lot, because they think to their own minds, that's where that sound's coming from. But realistically, it's the drums and the bass player. And the way you need to start listening to it is that the drums provide that, first of all, the high end of the drums, that snappiness, crackiness of the kick drum, that's providing all of that percussion, like the tempo sort of driving percussion. But, the lower tones of that kick are giving you that kick in the gut sensation. And then the bass is, the next 40% of the sound on top of that. And then when you double that with guitar parts, which are really just sort of like icing on top of the cake, they're just the dressing. They sound like they're doing all of the work that the bass player is doing, but they're not. They're literally just on top of and when you put them together, they culminate in this insane punchiness that gets credited to the guitar players more often than it should be. That said, like, obviously these guys work beautifully in unison, and everybody knows what they're doing and where they're sitting. And that's why, you know, these guys probably stand out, you know. Anyway, I'll jump back a little bit. Ooh, there's that bass. In Vice Grip, I mentioned having the gang vocals in there seemed really foreign and anthemic. Like I felt like that didn't seem like part of the genre, but apparently it is. Apparently it's a thing. And you know what? I'm 100% here for it. This is fantastic. Another thing I wanted to point out too is I want to thank the Lord for these guys, not these guys, but this genre in general. I guess if you're watching this, a lot of the bands you listen to, for bringing back guitar playing. You know, I mean, as you can see, it's kind of a big deal to me too. But it's one of those things where, you know, alternative sort of came in, you know, in the sort of early 90s, or grunge, I should say, and it took like all of the hard work that the 80s had done up to that point of, you know, in order to be in a band, you needed to be a guitar virtuoso. You couldn't just play guitar. You had to be amazing. And so these guys are sort of like stealing that back a little bit. And I don't know that these guys understand. Maybe they do. I don't want to take anything away from these guys and guys in the genre, but there's so much influence there from early 80s. Not even, like, a lot of times this is considered punk hardcore. Like, it's got roots in punk. But to be honest with you, I don't know that that's solely true. Like, this sort of guitar playing didn't exist in the punk genre, you know. And even pop punk, you can hear there's never guitar solos, and it's way less complex than this. You'd never hear a harmonized guitar part. But yeah, this is really interesting because it's sort of there's far deeper influences there. I mean, even the harsh vocals have roots in, you know, bands like Accept and stuff from the 80s, which is more of like a nasally sort of yeah sort of voice, and probably came a lot from AC/DC and bands of that ilk as well. But whereas this is more of that Frysing sort of raw kind of thing they got going on. But yeah, this is... Let me jump back a little bit again. That's the kick drums, baby. Okay. Obviously, a lot of feel changes and tempo changes. Again, that's kind of what I had in mind. That I guess Vice Grip didn't deliver. And interesting, I just noticed in the lyrics as well, they sort of a body locked in the Vice Grip of conflict. So I don't know if that's where that title came from in that later song, or it's just something, you know, that's sort of bouncing around inside the singer or whoever writes the lyrics' head. But that's an interesting little thing, like a little callback, I guess, because this is an earlier song, how I understand it anyway. Yeah, interesting lyrics too. The lyrical content is, I mean, it's all about pushing against the boundaries, right? Like tested by the force of the tempest, meaning like a tempest obviously being a maelstrom or a big storm. And I guess that's a metaphor for just chaos in general. Push the point of no return, losing ground, the steel of my resolve, not be bested by the sum of my fears. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Definitely ties in with what I'm hearing as well. Sometimes it's great to have lyrics that go counter to what you're hearing, but in this case, it's like literally straight down the line, exactly what you'd expect, and not a bad thing at all. This is what I like to hear. There's no strings on that guitar. I got to say, one thing I'm noticing, particularly with the guitarist, and I'm sorry if this is kind of guitar centric, as I'm a guitar player, that's what I relate to the most. But one thing these guys do really well, that I can hear so far, is that a lot of guitarists let their ego get in the way, and they definitely try to overplay it. And I heard something the other day, someone saying most guitar players only seem to exist to try to impress other guitarists. And that's definitely not the case here. These guys are obviously capable of much more, but they're exercising restraint, and they're opting for strong hooks and melodies rather than just shredding over the top of everything, which is, to be honest with you, probably what I would tend to do. But I find that really interesting, and I think that probably comes from a place of these songs existed in a space where there's no melody in the vocals. Right, so everything is sort of a monotone. Rah, 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 rah. There's no modulation of pitch, right? So what you're stuck with, if you take out these melodic guitar parts, is a lot of chug, 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 rhythm sort of stuff, and you got a vocal that's basically rhythm as well, and no melody for people's ears to cling on to and repeat, bounce around in your head. And I mean, if you hear a song on the radio and 5 minutes later you're singing the melody, that's what I'm talking about. And so that responsibility really lands in the lap of the guitar players in bands like this. So they have to be the ones who exercise restraint and come up with, like, as you just heard, like really repetitive, hooky guitar melodies to invite people back and to remind them what they're listening to. Because, I mean, 90 minutes of just drums, bass, and growled vocals is going to mean a pretty boring album. And so, like, as I said earlier, where the bulk of the sound is provided by the rhythm section, not the guitar player. The guitar players probably act more as the vocalist in these bands, really, as I should say, as the singer. And they sort of, their role is equally as important, Nice. Like, just picture it. Where would this end part here, this little breakdowny sort of outro, I guess, part, where would it be without those diddle-diddle-doo parts? It'd just be empty, right? So yeah, the guitar players, they're doing their part well, and they're vital in the sound of this. Nice. You know what I love? One of my pet peeves, and this is actually something, when I was writing songs a long time ago, I played a song to a friend of mine who I respected his opinion and stuff like that. And he said, you've got a 4.5 minute song with 3 minutes of ideas. And as soon as he said it, everything clicked into place to me. I'm like, you're absolutely right. You know, because I fell into this trap of like, you know, just copy and pasting a verse to a verse and then a chorus to a chorus and repeat ad nauseum, change some melodies and things like that. And so that's always been at the forefront of my mind every time I'm composing or arranging, particularly one of my songs, is that how many minutes of ideas are in this song, and you want to aim to have 10 minutes worth of ideas in an 8-minute song, you know, like that sort of thing. And that's what these guys do beautifully. Every single part sort of moves on to a slightly different space, and occasionally you'll call back to a verse sort of melody or something like that in the guitars, or, you know, but it bounces around and it keeps people interested. And I've always said, like, it seemed to me, looking from the outside in, that, you know, hardcore particularly, and you know, metalcore to a degree, is a genre for created by people with ADHD, you know, because they never stay in a particular place for very long, and that's really interesting. And I mean, like, I know bands like Dream Theater, and I'm a big fan of some of their albums and stuff like that, so I'm used to, I guess, complexity for complexity's sake, you know. And I don't think this encroaches on that territory. I think it's more necessary, you know, because again, there's so many elements to the overall sound which are kind of rhythmically complex but melodically basic. And so you need to keep people interested by shuffling the deck, you know, and that's what I see. But man, that was really cool. I'm a big fan of that song. I think it's fantastic. Part of what honestly kept me away from listening to these genres for quite some time was I'm not as much of a fan of screaming and growling full time. Like, I don't mind it if it's thrown in every once in a while. You know, like through, I guess, the early 2000s and stuff like that, you had a lot of emo bands and stuff where, you know, the guitar player would scream parts over the melodic singer and things like that. And that was fine. But I think as I'm getting older, I'm kind of like, this sounds really weird, but I'm softening to and moving towards the idea of I don't mind it so much anymore, which is really strange. It's usually the other way. Like, you know, can you just sing something I can understand? It's like that backwards, you know, aggressive vocals and stuff tend to interest me a little bit more now than they used to. So I feel like this is the exact right time to go on this journey anyway. But yeah, so that was Karma by Parkway Drive. Next up, I've been recommending August Burns Red. I've got no clue what they sound like, so I'm going to check out one of their songs next. Stay tuned. I'll be uploading that in the next few days. But thanks for checking in. Again, hit me up with any suggestions down the bottom. If you stuck around this long, I have an affiliate link for Enchroma Glasses, so I'm going to try to weave that into some sort of like a sponsor sort of thing. But if you click the link below, there'll be a link to Enchroma. Get your eyes tested for color blindness, and if you buy a pair of glasses, use the code CHAOS and get 10% off. So yeah, like I said, early stages of the channel. Thanks for sticking around this long, and I'll catch you on the next one.